Welcome to another season of Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe meet to empower you to succeed. This program is brought to you by Right Career Fit. Listen and learn, and remember to have that very important career conversation with a career professional.
A lot of the things that we're passionate about, we become passionate about them because they may well have been challenges for us in the past. The narrative approach is really beneficial in today's world because some assessments that were created in the past, they don't include, the values of other cultures, but storytelling does. When you follow a story and you're in that transitional period, you're in a place where the old no longer works, but the new has not yet arrived. If you have a story, you've got something to hold on to.
Thank you for joining me in Hoda's Career Info, your career program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. I am Hoda, your host. I look forward to another season of career chats with international professionals who will inspire you to take your journey to the next level. My guest today is Dr. Kevin Glavin. Dr. Kevin Glavin is a licensed professional counselor and educator with over 20 years of experience. He is the founder and CEO of Create Your Why, a company he created to provide career coaching, training, and consulting. He serves as adjunct faculty member at Nova Southeastern University in Florida, where he has taught career counseling since 2009. Kevin has served as president of the Ohio Career Development Association and editor-in-chief for the Journal of Employment Counseling. His most recent initiative, the Career Construction Academy, provides online career construction master classes. These master classes seamlessly integrate theory, cutting-edge technology, and immersive practicum experiences to equip career practitioners with the skills to proficiently administer and process the career construction interview. Thank you again for joining me and Dr. Kevin Glavin. Kevin introduces us to the career construction interview and how this type of interview helps you move your career forward. What actions and choices are you taking to productively move your career journey? Welcome, Dr. Kevin Glavin, to Hoda's Career Info. I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation like we just had earlier and continue on sharing important information with the audience. Part of this program is inviting my guests to think of a career term or a word that would explain to the audience a little bit of the work we do, but also that guides you in your work. With that term, if you could define it, not the dictionary or the Google definition that I would find online, but your definition of it. So a career term that defines your services and your definition of it.
Sure. Is it all right if I have two?
Yes.
So one word is work. And the reason why I want to talk about that word very briefly is because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand what career practitioners, career coaches, career counselors actually do. And sometimes people don't necessarily understand how important work is. And when I talk about work, I don't mean necessarily it has to be professional work. Work is everything we do. It's looking after kids, volunteering, looking after the elderly, etc. So the reason to me, Hoda, that word is so important is because I was taught that work is the implementation of your self-concept. And what that means is that work allows us to be who we are or who we want to be on a daily basis. And so if we do work we enjoy, or work that is the implementation of our self-concept, we probably will have more life satisfaction and well-being. The second word is career. And I was taught to look at career as a story. So I don't typically engage people in value card sorts or interest inventories. I ask them a series of qualitative questions that come from an evidence-based theory and background. But I look at you as a story. And, again, some people in the world don't necessarily believe they have a career. Everybody has a story. And I think if you listen to them long enough and closely enough, you'll find they're fascinating.
I love your definition of work. I never thought of it this way, because you go to work, you do what you got to do. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while when I first had my kids years ago. I was doing a lot of work. So I appreciate you adding that to the definition.
Yeah, it's and just so people know, I stand on the shoulders of giants. These are not my definitions, Hoda. I wish they were. They're definitions I was taught.
And you talked about the value of the story, and that's my next question to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, and embedded with that story, maybe a message that you'd like to share with the audience that you learned from your story?
Sure, that's a good question. So without taking too long about it, Hoda, I would say, so I'm from Scotland, which is a relatively small country compared to America. And I compare it only to America because I lived in the US for 20, 25 years. And even within Scotland, I lived in a small village called Bridge of Weir. So I was always attracted to the US, because it just seemed bigger and you had this American dream. But when I was growing up, I wasn't really good at anything. I didn't necessarily have that many interests. More importantly, though, going back to the whole idea of not being necessarily good at anything, I worked hard. I worked really hard. I just wasn't academically that great. And that was a bit of a worry because, round about the ages of like 16 to 18 in the UK, you have to take these exams. And depending on how well you do, that determines whether you or not you get into university. So I had worked as delivering cheese to the Highlands. I worked as pushing shopping trolleys, selling shoes, a bartender. And I didn't necessarily want to do that work. And I knew that if I didn't get into university, my choices might be a wee bit more limited. And then fortunately, I just happened to get good at mathematics. Now, when I say good, let's put it relatively, it was good enough to scrape into university. And so the reason why I chose to do mathematics and go to university and do that was because I wasn't good at anything else. And so eventually when I did graduate, I failed a lot, to be honest with you, but I managed to get through. Even when I got out, Hoda, I still had no clue what I wanted to do. So to cut a long story short, I ended up moving to the US, and I moved to a place called Kent, Ohio, and I ended up working for Kent State University as a multimedia developer. And while I had a great team, I liked some of the work that I did. I didn't love it. And it was a bit of happenstance. It was a friend of me that said to me, look, you're good with people, you like teaching. Why don't you think about taking a couple of classes in the counselling program at Kent State? Because they're free, because you work here. And I thought, well, why not do that? So I took two classes, and one of them was the career counselling class. And that was taught by a man called Professor Mark Savickas. So I'm sure you and many of your listeners will know who Mark Savickas is.
Absolutely. He's known. He's very well known.
He's kind of a big deal in the world of career, you know.
Yes.
So at that time, and even now, probably the most preeminent and eminent vocational psychologist of our time. And I, as a wee boy from Scotland, landed on his footstairs, you know, and that's kind of like I still wonder how that happens, you know, because
what a lucky, yes, luck plays a role as well.
Yeah, like a lot of happenstance, a lot of luck. And so essentially what happened is I got into Mark's class, and that first day of class, it was I had the feeling that I just came home. I had the feeling that Mark and I were speaking the same language. It was obvious to Mark that I completely loved the material, and I never looked back since then. So my work really essentially became helping other people find their work. And I stuck with Mark and studied at Kent State for about 10 years. I graduated in, I think, 2009. And now, even to this day, I still consider Mark a mentor, and I've had a 20-year relationship with him. Yeah, that's kind of, that's a big part of my own story.
I can see the message within it is that you started thinking, I have no interest. Look at you today. You have accomplished so much in the world of careers.
Yeah, do you know what? I don't know, to be honest with you. I wouldn't necessarily say I have accomplished nearly enough of what I wanted to, but yeah, actively master what you suffer. So I help people figure out what they want to do.
I love that. I love what you just said. Can you repeat it?
Sure. It's a phrase that comes from, again, Mark Savickas, and it's actively master what you passively suffer. So, you know, Hoda, I had a quick look at, you know, some of your own stuff before we came onto this meeting, and I know that you're interested in career literacy. And, you know, you didn't just fall out of bed one day, hit your head and think, oh, career literacy, that's it. It's so obvious, you know. Like that has a really personal and profound meaning for you, which, you know, I would never go into in a public discussion like this. But a lot of the things that we're passionate about, we become passionate about them because they may well have been challenges for us in the past, which is definitely the case for me.
I totally agree. Lots of reflection happened before I got to that term, for sure. Yeah. Dr. Kevin, I checked your website. It's what I do when before I meet my guests. Your website, createyourwhy.com. And on the homepage, you have a beautiful video that I encourage everyone to check out. It's very short, but really sums up the work of what many of us career professionals do. But you also talk about the Career Construction Academy and the Career Construction Masterclass. Why did you create this academy and this masterclass? Who is it for, and what's the value?
I did create the Career Construction Academy. I created these career construction masterclasses probably over the last few years. And actually, before the Career Construction Academy, I created a company called Create Your Why. And Create Your Why, in that, my business, basically, I conduct career coaching, but I do a lot of training and supervision, and I write some software applications to help people with career. So the Career Construction Academy actually is born out of the larger company, Create Your Why. And that's a really good question. Like, why did I create it? So I created it out of a wee bit of frustration, because, as I told you, when I walked into Mark Savickas' class all those years ago, that's 20 years ago, the work that Mark had been doing was so transformational. The career construction interview that he was teaching in that class was, even to this day, it's the most powerful intervention I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot, but I was always a little bit frustrated that nobody else was actually practicing it. So unless you went to Kent State University and you were studying in the counselling program or higher ed and taking the class with Mark Savickas, Hoda, you would never learn about it. And so I remember I would say to Mark, Mark, you've got the most amazing intervention, and there's so many people out there in the world that need it. But the one thing I didn't realize as much about Mark is that, Mark's very much somebody who works in the background, and he does favors for people, and they never hear about Hoda. And he's not the entrepreneur like John Holland would have been. So John Holland's work is known all over the world. I think it's brilliant. It's brilliant in its simplicity. But then you've got the work of Savickas, which is better at dealing with a more complex world of work that we now live in. But yet nobody really was teaching it, and not enough people were practicing it. So eventually I kind of got fed up with myself, and I thought, I'm gonna create the classes myself. So obviously, having worked with Mark for 10 years, and having, I think I started creating the classes in 2017. I had plenty of experience. I knew exactly what I wanted to create. And so now I've taught the course, I think 5 times. It's been limited recently to Singapore because that was our starting group. But we've put 60 coaches from Singapore through the program, and they like it. And the reason they like it, Hoda, is because it's different from your traditional VIPS model. So a lot of career coaches, they tend to know the same thing. They know how to measure values, interests, personality, and strengths, but they don't necessarily know how to tie them all together into a story. Also, those approaches, measuring VIPs, they're relatively simple approaches to a complex world of work. They don't necessarily deal with more complex issues where there's not necessarily a right answer. Like, so somebody might have a question like, should I have a second child? Because, I really want to get back to the work that I love, but my husband and I, we really want 2 children. There's no answer to that, Hoda, right? No. So, yeah. So like, then that's not something that will be measured or answered through an interest inventory, but by going through like a career construction interview, that engaging somebody in storytelling might help them better understand what would be a better solution for them. So that the reason I put it together is because nothing was there. Savickas' work is brilliant.
And I agree with you. I mean, I see a lot of inventories and other tests and assessments being done, but no follow-up is done on them. Whether at work or at school, assessments are being done, but no follow-up is typically done. And that's perhaps the missing link, the career construction interviews.
Yeah, because it's in the dialogue and the follow-up, Hoda, that you get the most important information.
Absolutely. It's the reason I do the work I do. That one-on-one conversations with my clients I feel is more important than the assessment, like you said. The interests, the abilities, it's cool to know them, but if you don't follow up with a conversation about them, it doesn't lead anywhere. Can you tell us a little bit about the classes? Like, how long are they? How does one sign up for them?
Sure. They're available on the Career Construction Academy website. And essentially right now there are 2. And this goes back to a little bit of happenstance as well, Hoda, because I was meant to go to Singapore, I think it was 2020, and I was meant to teach a career construction masterclass, which was going to be advanced. And essentially what that would have been is 20 hours of conceptual and theoretical material followed up with a 3-day internship, a practicum. And at the time, Hoda, during COVID, I thought to myself, there's a really good chance come the time I meant to go to Singapore, nobody's going to be flying anywhere. And that's what happened. So what I ended up doing was I put together a 20-hour course that has got all of the theory, all of the constructs on life designing for career construction. It's got the video that you and I had talked about earlier, where you've got, the case of Jamie, which is a real life recording of a career construction interview I shot in Australia a few years ago. And so that course there became what we now call career construction fundamentals. And I think the beauty of it is if somebody just wants to learn the fundamentals, they just take that 20-hour course. Okay. And not only does it have all the theory, but it has that real life case study. So they can learn vicariously by watching me work with Jamie. The other course is called Career Construction Masterclass Advanced. And the only difference between that and fundamentals is this 20-hour practicum. And that has proved to be like a game changer. And I've been in education, I think 25 years now. So I've taught everything from mathematics to soccer to career construction. And, you can talk to people and you can tell them about the theory. You can even demonstrate it, but it's not until they practice it, Hoda, that they truly learn it. So what essentially happens is if somebody takes the advanced class, they're given access to the theoretical material for 6 months, and they start that theoretical material 1 month before practicum. Now I do 3 webinars with them just to make sure that they're doing their work. And when we get to practicum, it is literally 3 days with 12 people. And we work from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. The last one we continuously went beyond it because people were that interested. And let's say you and I were in the class together, we would be paired up together. You would be conducting the career construction interview with me. And then the instructor, the supervisor, which again would be me, would give you 15 minutes of feedback. And then the next day it would be switched around. And then whoever was if I was your client the day before, I then become your coach. And the beauty of it, Hoda, is by the end of the 3 days, the 20 hours, the coaches in the class have seen 12 different styles. They've seen all the mistakes that people made. And I tell you, Hoda, most people make the same mistakes. So it cuts down their learning curve, because I go through and I'm very specific. And in the moment I teach them, look, this is why this didn't work. Here's how I would fix it. And that course has proved to be so beneficial that we're looking at running another 3 courses, another 3 runs of the course, 2 this year and 1, I think, in January, February in Singapore, 2024. So that's the difference between the courses. There's one other course, Hoda, that you did ask about in your email, and that was, I've got a course called Create Your Why DIY. So the reason why I put that course together, and that's probably been one of my goals since 2007. So I put the career construction interview online in 2007, and people could go on and they could answer it. And at that time, the idea was that you would go on and answer it, and your professor would help you understand it, or your practitioner would help you. But then, ethically, I thought, how do I really know that people are actually getting help with their responses?
Well,
and so
the right kind of help too. If they don't know the tools.
So that's a really good point. The reason, while I can't be the police of these instruments, we put it on a system that Mark Savickas and I created called Vocafor. Now, before you got access to that system, you had to fill out a form saying that, I, Hoda, have this degree and this is my license, etc. Now, certainly you could lie, but then that would be on you or the other person. That was the only way that we could put the other instruments online. The reason why I was more worried about the career construction interview, Hoda, is because it goes a lot deeper into someone's psyche. I also, at the time in 2007, I didn't know it well enough. So ever since then, one of my goals, my big goal was to put the career construction interview online in such a way that, people could take it and they make sense of it. The reason why it's a lot harder to put a qualitative instrument online, though, is because you're working with words and sentences as opposed to numbers. So for example, if we give you the self-directed search, that's a quantitative-based instrument. It gives you numbers for each of your interests, and it's quite easy to write an algorithm based on numbers. It's a lot harder to write algorithms that make subjective sense, make sense out of your subjective responses to a question like, who are your role models? But I am glad to say that I finished it actually probably earlier this year. It's AI enhanced, and it will take a person about 3 hours to go through the career construction interview on their own. At the end of it, they'll get like a 30-page report. It's always been a goal because the CCI takes about 3 or 4 hours to complete, and I'm just one person. And there's another 7.8 billion people out there that could be helped.
I see it as an assessment tool personally, the Create Your Why, DIY. So it's available online for anyone?
Yes. So if it's just anybody from the public, because let's say somebody can't afford to see Hoda, or they can't afford to see Kevin, or they don't have the time because, if you're really good at what you do, there's going to be a line of people out your door. And so what it's really about is giving that option for somebody who wants to learn more about themselves or wants to kind of figure out a transitional phase that they're in, is to give them that opportunity to do it when they have nobody else to come and see, like yourself or myself.
I think it's unique because it is a form of a narrative assessment that is done on your own. I just want to dig deep into the narrative approach a little bit, because that's what I feel, to me, the career construction and interviews is about. You help the clients, and now you're teaching other coaches to use the narrative approach to address career challenges. Would you mind telling us a little bit about the interview? Like digging a little bit deeper. I know we talked about the video, but the career construction interview, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Love to. Let me talk a little bit about the narrative approach in the career construction interview in particular. First of all, the narrative approach to me it's just so much more interesting, Hoda. See if I can just sit down with you for a half hour and I can talk to you and ask you these like structured questions. I'll learn so much more than I would have from like an interest inventory. The narrative approach also is really beneficial in today's world because some assessments that were created in the past, they don't include, the values of other cultures, right? But storytelling does, because most cultures tell stories, to pass down recipes, songs, traditions, etc. The career construction interview as a narrative approach crosses cultures. I've used it in the US, the UK, Australia, Singapore. In fact, I even used it in Japan, where I don't speak Japanese. And it was just one of the most amazing sessions where we had an interpreter, and it works, What exactly is it? So the CCI is a structured interview that contains a total of 6 questions. It's got 5 main questions and 1 introductory question. And what the questions really do, Hoda, is that they engage you in what we call life designing dialogues. So in simple terms, I ask you a question and you talk. And as you talk, most of the things that you say are autobiographical. So you're giving me like really, really important information about yourself. The first question is what we call the introductory question, and it just asks, how may I be of use to you? Now, very briefly, the reason why we ask that question is because if somebody comes in and says, I want to find the most well-paid job in Glasgow, Scotland, Well, then you don't need the career construction interview. You just need me to look up some statistics and facts for you. What it does is it sets up the contract and it makes sure that I can be useful for you to begin with. And whatever the client says, I write down verbatim. So I think in the case of Jamie, which is in the videos in the masterclass, I think Jamie said, look, I want to know what is it, that thing that I'm supposed to do? You know, what is it? You know, so that becomes a contract. And then at the end of the interview, you know, it might be 2 or 3 sessions later, I come back and say, hey, Jamie, how was this process is useful to you as you are trying to figure out that thing that you want to do? Now, the other 5 questions are the story crafting questions. So we ask about role models because they tell us about actually you, who you are, who you want to be. We ask about TV shows, which is about the work environment in which you might like to be engaged in. We ask about your favorite book or movie, your favorite saying, and your early life memories. And as you tell these stories, I take down notes. What you typically find is that there's a theme, Hoda, that goes across all the questions. And very often it's the client that spots the theme. Often I spot it because I've done this a lot. But I don't say anything because it's more powerful to let them say it. So they might say, gosh, you know what? Those 3 role models, they all have this in common. Or, wow, the role model here is quite similar to the person I loved in my favorite story. And so they start putting the pieces of their story together. And one of the reasons that it's important is because sometimes people fall out of story. Like the little video that you talked about on Create Your Why, there's a 2-minute video, which I think I sent you, which you please feel free to share now. But it basically shows a little cartoon character walking along just in life. And that could be you or I or anybody. But then life happens, like COVID happened. And sometimes unexpected things happen such that people fall out of story. And when you fall out of story, you can become de-storied. And if you fall out of story hard enough, you can become destroyed. So in a sense, a few years ago, Hoda, the whole world fell out of story. Now, I'm sure that COVID was, I know for some friends, they loved it, but there was a lot of pain, a lot of loss. And there were a lot of people that found themselves in transition. So when you fall out of story and you're in that transitional period, you're in a place where the old no longer works, but the new has not yet arrived. Now, a really good example of this is, you know, you take an elite athlete, like a gymnast, you know, practices, you know, and self-identifies as an elite athlete their whole life, and then they break their leg before the Olympics. And it's a career-ending injury. Well, think about the pain. That person is just fallen out of story. So their whole identity, their whole self-concept has now gone because they can't be that person they wanted to be. It's very similar to people who go from retirement. They often go in from retirement to retirement because they can't go into nothing. People going from the military into civilian. So this idea of falling out of story is not new, but when you're in that void, it can be so painful that some people will fill the void with addictions like Netflix, drugs, alcohol, etc. And our job as professional practitioners is to help them get back on story. So the falling out of story, that old chapter is no longer working for them. So we can use these story crafting questions from the career construction interview to help them identify, well, who do I want to be next? What do I want to do next? And we get them back on that path to a story, because if you have a story, Hoda, you've got something to hold on to. It gives you comfort, a sense of meaning, a sense of continuity. And when you don't have it, you have uncertainty, doubt, depression, anxiety, etc. So after about 2 or 3 sessions, I normally do 2 sessions with three sessions with my clients, but the first 2 sessions are about 90 minutes. We go through the career construction interview, and I'm not saying, Hoda, that there's always this right answer that comes out and it just makes itself so obvious. Oh, this is what I should do next. Very often what happens, I think, with this approach is that people learn to understand that, look, there's some things in life I just can't change. And if I can't change it, the only thing I can change is how I view the situation. I need to change my perspective. So by changing their perspective, that can be really powerful because it allows them to move around the challenge so that they're no longer stuck in that void. And I hope that does it. I hope that does it justice, because actually I don't think I could ever do it justice, Hoda, because with the clients that I see and the transformation I see in them afterwards is quite remarkable. And it's not necessarily me that's done anything. They've had that bravery to tell their story and to think about it and to come out the other end with a new perspective.
Thank you so much for taking on this challenge. You did it justice, I believe, because you really gave the details of the work that career practitioners and professionals do. My final question to you, Kevin, is definitely about the things that you're going to do in the future. You are doing right now, and you've got so many new things going on right now. But I always like to wrap up with guests saying, so where do you see your next goal, or what are your hopes for the future?
Well, that's such a good question, Hoda. And, you know, I kind of do know and I don't know. And I think this is useful for clients to see, and students and professors, everybody else, is that I've got my fears about the future, the uncertainty about the future, just like everybody else does. So right now, the future's uncertain. You know, I thought I would remain in a full-time faculty position forever. And I love teaching. In fact, the university I first taught for, Nova Southeastern University, I still teach for them, Hoda. But I started with them 14 years ago. I don't know exactly where it will be, but I tell you what will definitely happen is, because I put so much work into the masterclasses, and especially the Create Your Why DIY course, which literally was just finished a couple of months ago, but then artificial intelligence came out, Hoda. And so I held off on really pushing the DIY course, because what I've done is I've now integrated artificial intelligence into it to the point where if you get stuck at a question, you can actually now go in and you can say to the chat bot that I've created, okay, you know, can you help me with the role model question? And then what it will try and do is help you with the role model question. So I would say that I've got to pull the trigger, get that software out there, and not keep on adding to it, because AI is just going to continue to change and get better. But it's like my baby, you know. It's like a baby. So I've had that this 2007, you know. So you know what? It's almost 17, so it should be out. It should be out of the house. It should be out there. People should be using it. People should be saying what's wrong with it, what they like about it. And yeah, I think that's an exciting but a scary idea at the same time. You know, something you've been working on for for almost 20 years. And I'd say the other big one, Hoda, is just really important to teach practitioners the work of civicus. It's important that they know how to use a narrative intervention like the career construction interview, because the issues that the clients are going to come to see them with today, they're so complex that the traditional methods that we're using, they're not going to be enough. They're not going to work. One of the most important things that's happened to me over the last 4 or 5 years is I became colleagues and friends with a couple of individuals in Singapore, Jeremiah Wong and Gerald Tan. And Gerald runs a company called Hoda. So through Jeremiah and Gerald, the three of us have been working to teach the career coaching community in Singapore how to do this work. And, you know, we've got about 60 people trained. So we want to take that model and teach it to more people. So we have the software, we have the materials, and we definitely have the passion.
I appreciate you sharing first your fears and concerns about the uncertainty, because we always challenge our clients to kind of say, okay, so what next challenge are you taking on? And they go through that fear and uncertainty. So I think everybody needs to hear that there's always fear and uncertainty when we take on new challenges. And I agree with you, the work of Dr. Mark is very important and we need to talk about it. Oh, and it annoys me that everybody knows who this actor is, but very few people know about the career development professionals who have really important work to share.
That's actually, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we face in career is that a lot of people don't know how interesting the work is, you know, and I tell you, Hoda, as soon as you ask them the first question on the career construction interview about role models, people are just amazed at what it tells them about themselves. So actually, what we really need is we need entrepreneurs and enterprising people to push a product that's already proven. That's a task, you know, and to help folks understand like how important the work is, but also how interesting it is to know more about yourself from these questions.
That's such an important thing, to know yourself. Like if you know yourself, I think you can live a happier life at work and otherwise, for sure. These were all the questions I have prepared for you today, Dr. Kevin. Was there anything else that you would like to talk about that I didn't ask you, or something to wrap up for the audience?
Not necessarily. I think I even took up more time than normally you allot. What I might suggest is that if people are unsure, and obviously I'm biased, Hoda, and we're both biased about, you know, career, but I offer enough free things on my website for them to try, so they can go and they can try the role model question. It will give them a report, so they can actually have an idea as to, you know, hey, does this actually work? Also, the courses that I teach, the platform that I use allows people to take like a module in the course without supplying their credit card. So if they're not sure, you know, go try it. If it's not what they need, then I don't want their money. What I want them to do is like take it, and if they think, okay, I could use this, then go ahead and try it. And if people have questions for me, you know, I'm quite easy to get a hold of.
You definitely are. And the website was, again, createyourwhy.com. Is that correct?
Createyourwhy.com. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kevin, for your time.
Thanks, Hoda. I really appreciate your flexibility as well, and your time.
You've been listening to Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. I hope you enjoyed my conversation today on Hoda's Career Info with Dr. Kevin Glavin. Dr. Glavin shared his fears as well as his dream of supporting others. What fears are stopping you from taking the next step in your career? You can connect with Dr. Kevin Glavin on LinkedIn. Don't forget to share your feedback in the comments section. Please remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes.
Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, stay inspired and keep moving forward in constructive ways.